Hello, I'm Chuck Akins, the host of Deciphering Digital, and today we welcome Matt Holman, who is one of the hardest working, most authentic and available people that I know in all of my business endeavors. So Matt's here today to talk to us about how to grow loyalty, engagement, and revenue using subscriptions and memberships. And we couldn't have a person more qualified to do this. First off, Matt runs a newsletter, a weekly newsletter called Subscription Prescription that he's been running for about 2 years. He also heads up and created a group called Commerce Catalyst. It's centered in Salt Lake City, but there's online things as well. And he's had a number of really successful events over the past year. And then I originally met him through QPilot, which is a more of a B2B app to help brands set up auto ship and recurring subscriptions either on Shopify or WooCommerce. So Matt's got plenty of insights and advice to help you leverage subscriptions and memberships to have more loyalty, engagement, and revenue from your client base. So with all that, let's dive in and welcome Matt.
All right, Matt, tell me how you found your way to the concept of subscriptions. How'd you get here?
It's kind of a funny story because I was working in B2B SaaS marketing for an e-commerce company called eHub, and we were doing shipping rates, and which is kind of like a very unsexy part of the world, but and difficult to market how you make shipping interesting or appealing. I was doing that for a while and kind of wanted to go the entrepreneur route. And as I was putting feelers out there for other businesses, I came across QPilot, which is a subscription platform. What's kind of interesting though is as I started to get deeper and deeper into subscriptions, I also started to do some like impromptu marketing meetups with some friends on marketing. And the last few years for me has been a very strong journey of kind of like following the path of where I'm finding the most resonance, like the most, like I feel like I can be the most impactful, the most kind of like game changer. And that really ultimately is being less of a B2B SaaS marketer and more of working directly with brands to like figure out subscriptions as well as the events and the community piece and being able to like connect people and empower people that way.
Wow, there's already so much I want to unpack there because I know that you put a lot of time into building community and honestly kind of giving to community both through networking and running different events and things. So before we jump into it, let's park there for a second. Like just give a quick overview of the different enterprises and entities real quick that you kind of have out there that you're working through from your newsletter to your online community. Just give us a quick run through of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my partner QPilot is David Bradley, and we started Subscription Prescription last year as kind of like a new content play. And that is actually developed now into a full-fledged business. We have a newsletter, podcast. We're launching a paid membership and community for subscription brands here in the next few weeks. We do a ton of work on the consulting side as well as just creating content and helping brands figure out how to do subscriptions. So that's kind of like my big day in, day out passion project and what I'm working on. And then I've also been doing a community that's local to Utah called Commerce Catalyst. We started out as like a little marketing group, little marketing breakfasts and meetups and lunches. But in September, we held a full day marketing conference with over 300 people. Wow. Our Slack groups got close to 800 people, very engaged. So looking into 2024, we're scaling up the events we're offering, going to be doing more workshops and trainings as well as just fun events and learnings. So those are the two things that I'm mostly involved with. I try to dabble here and there helping people out because that's kind of how I feel like I've been helped in my life. So that's one of the reasons I give back is because of all the benefit from the community I've had as well.
Yeah, you know what I really like about what you've done is that so often I meet marketers and you know what they're the absolute worst at? It is doing their own marketing. So here you are today. You're talking about subscriptions. We're talking about community engagement, loyalty, membership. Yeah, you're advising brands, and we're gonna talk about some of the trends and tactics and different things that you might have in your head or even in deployment. But you're out there doing it. I mean, you are actively building community. You are actively building membership. You're creating that engagement. So, your firsthand experience, man, is really valuable for a brand that might be struggling with this. So, let's dive in a little bit. So,
Sure.
as a consumer, I get two things that I understand pretty well, and I think most people can relate to with subscriptions. And that for me is a subscription box, maybe a meal kit. And I think that is, if I understand kind of the subscription world, that's a pretty big chunk of business out there. That's a very
Right.
attractive business model. And then there's subscriptions for what, I mean, I know we call them consumables, but for me, I think, at most experience it was subscribe and save, right? Just, I've got something that needs refilled, and so I subscribe and save. And I'm sure like we could spend the next hour on just one of those two topics, but I actually want to do the exact opposite. I want to say, let's skip subscription box marketing. The folks, like when I talk to a pet food brand, they have auto ship figured out. They live and breathe it every day. So
Right.
I want to focus on other use cases and other scenarios, because it takes, I think it probably takes a little more creativity and a little more innovation, if you will, for brands that aren't a subscription box or they're not a consumable. So if you're okay with that, I
Absolutely.
don't know, just am I to talk about that a little bit? Am I dividing the
Yeah.
world up properly?
I think so, and I think what's been really interesting for me, I think, is when we talk about this repeat engagement, is there are lots of ways to engage and get recurring revenue from customers, and not through your typical classical subscription model. So, like you mentioned, pet food. So yeah, it's pretty obvious if you sell pet food, you're going to feed your pet every day. You need to order replenishment for pet food. So subscriptions are pretty obvious. You should be doing that. Once we get outside of those, you're like talking about like a shoe brand, right? Or like a clothing company. Like, yeah, there's really interesting use cases like Stitch Fix, but nobody's building this really sophisticated pick your own box every month. No, it's more like, hey, if I want to buy some t-shirts, like Fabletics is a really great example, right? Fabletics sells like workout shorts, right? And other clothes. And the way you access their pricing is through a membership model. You're basically paying them a subscription. You're paying them a dollar amount each month to access the products and the service at a discount. And so I think that's where, if you think about it, sometimes it's not so much like replenishment, but more about access. So what can you sell? What can you give? What can you do that's a little bit elite or a little bit special? And that real question comes back to, I think it's really important to start asking yourself as a founder, as a brand owner, who are my best customers? Who are the people that love me the most, that spend the most with me, that value my product or service more than anyone else? And what can I do to start enhancing what I offer them? So a really great example of that is, say you are that pet food company. And for your top 10% of customers every year, you invite them to come to the place where you make pet food, to prove to them, to show them how fresh the food is made. Or you run activities for them to bring their pets out to, right? Like you do like a meet and greet with everybody's dog and cat and parakeet or whatever it is. And that's only available to your most exclusive customers, and they pay to have access to that as a membership. They want to be part of that brand. They want to interact with other people, that brand. They want to interact with you as a founder. So it's like that mentality of thinking like, what other ways can I start offering somebody something that really, really values what I do?
Yeah, I really like that focus of your top 10%, maybe 20, but I think
Maybe
even
20.
10% is 10 to 20% top customer, and what would they want access to now? Now, how much of that access is still related to price and discounts? I mean, is that a core component?
The thing is like it depends. If when you're selling, the problem is when you're selling pet food and you're selling, and we can use I'm happy comfortable using all kinds of examples. Like agency owners is another great example. Like for every Facebook ad agency out there, you have a million competitors doing what you do, right? So do you really want to be the company that's just discounting and discounting and discounting and getting into the discount game? Or do you want to be the company that goes a little bit farther and does a little bit more and charges for it? And
Mhm.
so the idea is like, if you get into this price game, you're attracting people that are interested in price. And while that is actually important, there's a ton of our economy that is commoditized in that way. It's also like a dangerous game to be in, because you have the Chinas of the world, you have AI, you have lots of people coming for the commodities.
Yeah.
So what can you do to enhance your service, enhance your product, so that you're a little bit more focused, a little bit more special, and a little bit more of a value on, right? So even if you're an agency, if that means you just offer better reporting, right, than anybody else does, or you offer an extra call each month more than what somebody does. Yes, that's a little cost to your business, but the difference is you can charge more for that, because you're going to find customers that really value that and want that. And that's kind of the whole point, is like understanding more about your own customer base, what they value, and what you can offer them that's going to be really valuable. And that's where I think the beauty of subscriptions and memberships, what you can learn from those types of programs.
Oh, that's great. So I've got one or two things, but right there at the end, you said something that caught my attention. And even when I was, reading, I think you have 80, 90, closing in on 100 episodes of,
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
right, the subscription, subscription. Which way is it?
It's subscription prescription.
Prescription.
I mean, funny thing, I was telling my wife I picked up a subscription the other day, but I meant to say prescription.
Right. No,
Like, yeah,
I
I picked up a
interchanged it. And
subscription. Yeah,
I don't even live in your head, and I get the words forward and backwards. But yeah, I think over on LinkedIn, you're somewhere 80, 90, 100 episodes deep. And one of the things that occurred to me is the interchangeability of memberships and subscriptions. But I'm sure, like most words and most concepts, there's a clear demarcation difference between the two. So talk to us a little bit about the difference between a membership and a subscription, but then also how are they similar?
Actually, it's funny. I've done several episodes trying to define this. I think most people, when you hear the word subscription, you think of Amazon Prime, but I would define Amazon Prime as a membership.
Right.
So subscription is usually involving something you're paying for, and that you're getting like shipped to you or delivered. It's like something physically coming to you, whereas membership is typically something like access. The problem is that we say we're subscribed to a membership often, which is where things get confusing. But that is how I would define them. Is a subscription is like you're getting a discount on what you're buying. And the biggest example I'll use is like going to like a movie theater, right? Like a movie theater, and most companies have a loyalty program. So like if you have your phone number registered with them, they'll give you a certain discount off of concessions. You can pay to be a member of the movie club, which gives you 20% off plus a free ticket every month. So you're paying them money in exchange for something, a better discount, an extra ticket, and that is a membership. Whereas sometimes you have like loyalty options, or a subscription would be like, I'm paying to have a box of popcorn shipped to my house every month.
Right. Right. Okay. And not that those definitions matter in the overall success of the program and establishing loyalty and engagement and interacting with your most important customer, but it is important when you maybe are internally thinking about it or planning your programs or thinking about it. What are we dealing with here? Is this a subscription, a subscribe and save? Is this a membership? Is this a loyalty program? Particularly as you go to define it and market it, you've got to be really clear about what it is.
I think it's even more than that. I'd say like it's important to define what you want the outcome to be. So like a great example of this is a loyalty program. A local juice company I've got a loyalty program with them, and every once in a while they'll send me a text. And the goal of that is to try to get me to come back and buy more juices, right? So like, is the goal of the program to get somebody to subscribe to the pet food? Is the goal to get somebody to pay you for access to better content or for a better service? So that's kind of, I think the goal is to start having outcomes in mind of what you're trying to get your customers to do, because that's what's going to start shaping, like regardless of terms, like understanding who you're trying to speak to and what you're trying to get them to do is what's really important.
Thinking through that, I think I can wrap my mind around most of those. For example, loyalty, get 10 juices, 11th one free, whatever it might be. A subscribe and save, I usually think like, oh, if I'll subscribe and save, you'll knock 10, 15% off for me, or like you'll give me something extra, right, in my shipment. Those are different in my subscription. Membership, And I have to scratch my head a little bit because if I were setting up a membership for either a consumer or a B2B brand, and I think about what the customer wants or what they would value based on in what I can provide, how do I price that? How do I think about that?
It's one of those things where if you're just starting out, like if you're building a new business model from scratch, like unless it's 100% membership focused, like it's like a gym membership, it's something to maybe like be a little bit careful of. Like you want to get a little more information on what people are looking for. But gyms are a really great example. Here in Utah, there's a really popular one called Vasa, and they have two membership options. They've got a $10 a month where you pick one location and you can go to that location as much as you want. They've got a $20 a month option where you can go to any location and you have access to a couple other parts of the facility that I've actually never used. Now, I have the $20 one because I'm regularly in different areas of locations and I like dropping into the gym.
Okay.
Now, 95% of the time I go to the same location. But for me, I really value that versatility and being able to go somewhere where it's most convenient to me. Like if I have to drop my kid off early at school, I'm going to go to the gym by her school, not the gym by our house. And so this is the kind of like that whole idea of what I would want everybody to start thinking about is you're typically a lot of businesses, you're selling one thing or you're selling it one type of way. So even if you're selling e-commerce for an agency, you're selling a product and you sell it through a subscription or one time, or you're selling an agency, you're selling a set of services.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you're giving one offer essentially to everybody. And the goal with any great business is I believe, is to uncover what people will pay more for because it's more valuable to them. So as example, with that gym membership, they're charging, some people are paying twice as much as everybody else there. We're all using the same equipment, but I value the ability to go to wherever I want, whenever I want, more than the person who's paying $10 a month. And so if you're an agency, what types of customers are you working with that maybe a small percentage of them are willing to pay 20, 50, 100% more? And it really doesn't cost you that much more to service them better, but you're able to service them better.
So offers, if I'm used to selling something one particular way, how would I go about introducing, let's say I've talked to customers and I say, ooh, I think here's something they value. How do I get started there? How do I think about the offer, get it in front of people? Is it new customers?
Yeah,
is it existing? How would I go about that?
I think some of the, like some really great examples I think of are just really simple. It's like thinking about how people are using it. So an example, a friend of mine that runs an Amazon business told me once was they were selling stuffed animals on Amazon. And if you go searching for stuffed animals on Amazon, you'll see a million results. But they wanted to target people that were like, kids cuddling with their stuffed animals at bedtime. So they made a story time book and paired it with the stuffed animal. And it was a story about that stuffed animal. It's very simple and not that expensive to make at scale. Like if we're making books, they're not that hard to print and they're actually a lot easier to source than say a lot of other things. But now if you search on Amazon, now you see a bunch of stuffed animals, you see a stuffed animal with a book for bedtime. And so that's just a little bit more specific of an offer. And it's not that much, and it makes it stand out compared to all the competitors. So thinking about other products. So like, for example, pet food, right? A really simple one would be to include like a chew toy or a treat with the pet food, right? Getting a little bit fancier would be thinking about like ways to train your pet. Is the pet food for puppies or is it for older dogs? If it's for older dogs, then maybe that activity book is about activities for older dogs to get them healthy and engaged and outgoing. If they're for puppies, then they're training and games and things like that. So thinking through how the end user is using your product, what is just a little bit of a way you can start to enhance that? So when I talk about the agency model, it's like, okay, well, maybe all of your customers aren't saying the same thing, but the people that are paying you the most or that have been with you the longest or that value the most, what more could you give to them? Is it an extra meeting? Is it reporting? Is it, hey, we haven't been doing SEO, but we'd really like you to take on SEO. So, okay, well, if you're willing to pay more for that, we're willing to front that cost. So that's just kind of like thinking about the offers, thinking about the end use, what people are doing, and what could you start to pair with it. Another good example with like products is like protein powder. People use pre-workout, they use post-workout, they're using like weight loss and all these other things to try to like enhance their workout experience. Well, are you selling that as a bundle? Are you selling that as an option? Like, is there a training or a workout program you can include? So when we're thinking about offers, I always like to say that is like, what can you do that just makes it stand out a little bit more, that makes it a little bit more valuable, and that makes sense for the use case that you're trying to sell to.
Right. And I don't want to oversimplify it. What I'm hearing there, and then correct me if I'm going the wrong direction with this, is that if I was going to layer services or layer products or have a better offer, I would just keep working on the way I've always done it. Like I'll just make it better. I'll have two services instead of one. But what I think you are implying here, or what I'm hearing, is that have the add-on or have the improved offer be for members or be for subscribers, and then you have this group of members and non-members, and they can make that choice if they want the additional services or the additional items that come with it, if they value that. So it's not that you have option A and option B, you have option A and membership and non-membership. So, and I think that would bring the concept of membership to a lot more brands to have this conversation about what do customers value, what can I provide. And
what can you do that's going to make them want to spend more with you, right?
Yeah.
Like the e-commerce play that I really like that's happening now is within memberships, and it's the idea is, hey, you're going to pay $50 a year. We're going to give you $50 in store credit, and we're going to give you 5% cash back on all purchases. So people immediately go spend the $50. Like to them, if you think about it, if it's a brand you shop at more than once, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
$50, I get immediate store credit that I'm going to go use. I'm going to get 5% cash back. Now, two things are happening. One, the customer gets immediate value. That's a no-brainer. The company gets immediate cash infusion of those $50 for anybody who subscribes to that member. There I go. And anybody that buys that membership for $50. You're spending it on store credit, and it's rare when somebody just spends the $50 store credit, right? They're actually buying more than that, and you have margin on those things, so it's not like it's a total loss. But that 5% cash back gets people to like start thinking about, hey, just imagine if you have like extra loyalty points at one gas station versus another. I'm going to go to the gas station where I'm getting more points back or cash back on my card because it's all other things being equal, it's a no-brainer. So that 5% cash back incentivizes somebody, hey, if I'm going to go buy a pet treat, I'm not going to go to PetSmart. I'm going to go online because I get 5% cash back and I have a membership there. So that's incentivizing more and more purchases and more engagement.
Well, I'm wondering how complicated this gets. I've got to track it. I'm doing cash back. I might have discounts. Like what makes this easier? How would I implement? How would I go about this? Just right out of the gate. Let's say I either a consumer brand or if a business brand's there. What exists to help me figure this out and actually support it and execute it?
The beauty of Shopify is the app ecosystem. There's a lot of programs that make that really simple from a loyalty standpoint, from the membership side. One that I'm a big fan of right now is called Inveterate. They're coming on pretty strong in doing that. On the B2B side, memberships and stuff like that actually are not that tricky. I mean, it's really just about like a role or user-based management on the website. You basically start tagging somebody that they have access to certain pages and other people don't. They have access to certain products or offers and other people don't. So it's actually not that complicated. If anything, that kind of tech has actually like been around for a long time.
Okay, good. So not too hard to implement, and I'm interacting with my best customers for the goal of generating more revenue per customer, which sounds like a great business strategy. And this is well beyond retention, because you want to retain customers and have loyal customers, but you're even saying take your best customers and get more monetization out of them. So love it.
Well, and the reason for that is because when I work with subscription brands, one of the biggest things is like, you start a pet food subscription and you lose 30, 40, 50% of your subscribers in the first month. Like that happens all the time. And so brands are obsessing and worrying about the 30, 40, 50% they're losing. And sometimes it's actually more about understanding who the 50% that stuck around.
Right.
Like who's still there in month 8, 9, 10 on the subscription? What makes them different, unique? What makes them value the subscription more? Let's go find more of them. Let's change up the marketing, the offer, the ads, the product page, so we speak more to the people that want to be around longer. And so that's often a lot of the work that I do is like, hey, you're selling to all these different people. If you focus on this segment, you're going to be a lot more profitable and make more money, and your churn is going to basically solve itself. Your retention is going to solve itself if you find more people like this. And that's ultimately what we're talking about is you get better at finding the people that value you more. You make a couple of different offers so that people can self-select what they want, and retention takes care of itself.
Have you done any work in the digital product space entirely? So, we're talking about brands and marketers, but there's a lot of creators out there who have to get good at memberships and subscriptions. I mean, even yourself. I mean, your newsletter, as an example, that is a subscription, even though at the moment it's free. I know a lot of newsletters will charge money for their newsletter. Do you have any feedback, input, direction, trends as it relates to intangible digital products?
Absolutely. I think one of the beautiful lessons you can take if you're selling digital products and or a content creator is actually looking at B2B SaaS pricing models. And so what I'm getting at is that B2B SaaS is really, really great at segmenting a couple of different things. They have a free version usually for some of the basics, and then anything that is like really valuable to a certain segment of their audience, you have to pay for. So as an example, like Carrd, CARRD, it's a landing page builder. It's free to use, right? But if you want to start like customizing the URL so it matches only your website and doesn't have .card.co at the end, or if you want to be able to connect your CRM to it, you have to use a paid plan. And so people that just want to throw up a landing page and get started, it's free. Anybody who's a little bit more serious about using the tool, you have to pay more for it. And so with digital content creators, I think that's where a lot of the option is you don't have to use it. And I'm not saying you have to use a free option. What I'm saying is you have to differentiate between the way some people would use it. So for me, when we're looking at a paid membership for a subscription community, I'm going to have two pricing tiers. I'm going to have a price for people that just want to come in and be a member of the group and be involved in the discussions and get access to some cool content. There's going to be a higher pricing tier for brands that want more of an audit and onboarding experience, where you want some experts to look at the program. It's kind of like a cheaper way of getting a subscription expert in your business. Mm-hmm. The logic behind that is if I do one or the other, I'm going to miss out on a ton of opportunity. But if I can do both of those two things, the people that pay more, it's going to make more revenue for me. They're also going to value that service and that group more. They're paying more and they're getting more out of it. But I also have the ability to market to both, right? Somebody comes in the group for free, I'm going to be, or the lower price, I'm going to be able to market other products or services to them. The idea is coming up with an offer. I don't like getting more complicated than that. Like most B2B SaaS models have 3, 4, 5 tiers. I would look at 2 or maybe 3 at the most if you have a really clear view of what you're selling to start. But that's kind of the idea is like, hey, I've got 2 different core user types I want to speak to. On, if I'm selling a course, I've got the people that are just getting started aren't going to pay that much for it because they're just getting started and they don't know what they don't know. So here's a free 3-episode version of my YouTube series. And then if you want the full, it's this price. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's just a lot of ways of like trying to uncover user behavior, right, how people are going to value it and what they're going to pay.
So now let's combine the two concepts. And as you were talking, the model that popped into my mind, I have no idea why I do not own a Peloton bike, is that I can often buy workout equipment, but then there's this digital product membership that I can also interact with. I mean, is that a fading trend? Is that a trend for the future? I mean, what's kind of going on in that space?
So let's set aside like whatever financials and so, because Peloton's been in the news about some of like, scaling their company back. Let's just focus on the core like business offering, because I think it's been incredibly successful. Is basically they're looking at, there's essentially 2 or 3 types of exercise users in the world that are interested in working out in their home. So that's the whole goal, right? Peloton is selling you exercise equipment in your home. So unlike me, who's going to a gym, they're trying to get somebody who either wants to work out at home or only feels comfortable working out at home, or there's a lot of reasons why somebody would be working out at home. Now, are you the type of person who is really self-motivated and knows all about the workouts? You're a professional cyclist. You don't need to be involved in any of these groups. Okay, cool. You can still buy it. It's great equipment. The people that really value the Peloton, though, are people that are really interested in accountability. exercise accountability. They have like a routine or a regimen they're going to show up for. There's content to help motivate you. If you've been on a long bike ride, even in your own house, it sucks. So being engaged in a group or seeing different landscapes. So the idea is they're selling extra. And that's the whole thing, is they're not just selling an exercise bike. They're selling an exercise regimen. They're selling a lifestyle change. They're selling the ability to love working out again instead of like hating it or dreading it. And so that's where that comes down where I think we're going to see more and more of that. It's people are buying from influencers that run brands because that influencer adds a little extra flavor to it for them, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to see the Taylor Swift movie because of how much you love Taylor Swift. It's not just because you think that it's going to be a great movie or a great concert, right? So that is the future, is like thinking about more about what we can offer. And it's all coming back to understanding end user behavior, end user desires, goals, or problems that you're trying to solve. That's ultimately what it comes down to, is getting really good at identifying those things. And that requires a lot of iteration, a lot of testing and practice. And it feels overwhelming. But the biggest example, or I can say for that, is in e-com, is a great example, is everybody starts a company or business with an assumption in mind. A really great example here is in Utah, there's a company called Pajamas, and they started selling basically like a pajama that a kid could safely go in the night and not have to wear a diaper. And their whole thing about doing that was this idea of like, we're going to save people money on having to buy diapers for their kids as they get older, because those are expensive. But when they started doing feedback from those purchases, they got feedback that people, and this is after they've built the business, they've done tons of revenue, they start surveying more and more of their customers, and they start finding out that, actually, it has to do with the embarrassment. Their kids, their 5 or 6 year old kids, actually feel less embarrassed wearing this, and it actually helps get them from stop bedwetting sooner. Oh, wow. Well, we've been marketing around the price and the convenience, not the psychology of how it affects your children and how fast you can potty train your kids now. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Changing up the marketing and messaging, and they sell out a product. So that's kind of like the whole idea is you start to build a business. We make assumptions. Start checking on those assumptions. Start finding out what people really value and why, because you're going to then learn what you could start charging more for.
Yeah, and I think where I'm changing my thinking is that whenever I get that customer feedback, I go back and change the original offering.
Right.
And what we're saying here, and it doesn't always line up. I'm not quite sure how it will line up for the diaper people in the pajamas, but what you're saying is enhance the offer through membership, letting everyone still have the original product offering or service offering, but then through membership, get at the things that they might value, because they will quickly pay for it. If they
maybe it's just, and for them, it's like, maybe you just don't need to discount as much as you thought you did. Mm-hmm. Like you change the marketing messaging a little bit, you change the ad components a little bit, and you don't discount it as much. You're going to keep selling or sell even more. So each sale is going to be more profitable. From a membership side, though, yeah, you start to figure out like, oh, okay, maybe people would pay for like a content source, or like on how to like help your kids do that faster, right? Like, again, that's where you start to see the opportunities of where you can go.
Okay. No, great. All right. So we're sitting here at the end of 2023. By the time this drops, it'll probably be the beginning of 2024. What do you see? What do you see evolving? Knowing half of predictions are wrong, there's probably a better stat for that, and probably most of them are wrong. But give us a few. Where is this headed? What is emerging? What are some of the innovative trends that may or may not work? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing that, as everybody's seeing, that there's going to be a little bit less work from a brand standpoint and more like influencers, celebrities, and maybe not even, I don't even necessarily mean movie stars, but maybe you're a LinkedIn celebrity on business and you're building your own company, right? Dave Gerhardt's a great example of a B2B marketer who founded a community, and now he's like building a media empire out of it, right? So I think that we're going to continue to see more and more people invest in their personal brand and figure out ways to monetize that. I think the lesson there is that they're paying attention to their audience and what their audience is asking from them more and more, like the Alex Hermosis of the world that are just really great at creating content and making offers for that audience. I think that the extension of that is that the way you can compete from the brand side is spending more time surveying customers, figuring out what they want, figuring out what better ways you can sell to them. And again, one of the things I love about e-com especially is that there's just so much innovation around that user experience, right? Like we all thought a couple of years ago that text SMS was just going to kill email, right? Well, that hasn't happened, but we're going to continue to see innovations around how quickly people can buy, how quickly people can change an order, edit an order, upsell for an order. And that's going to continue into 2024 very much so.
Got it. So let's switch gears to you and what you're building a little bit. So at one point you were sitting there with your new brand, you and David from QPilot, and you were you were building the newsletter. Most people build their newsletter in a newsletter system, right? The ConvertKit, MailChimp, whatever.
Right.
You picked LinkedIn.
Well, actually, we did HubSpot and LinkedIn. So we have HubSpot as a CRM at QPilot, and so we started doing an email newsletter. But I was subscribed to a couple of newsletters on LinkedIn, and the more research I did, LinkedIn is interesting because it automatically asks any new connections or connections you have if they want to subscribe to your newsletter. So you can actually grow a newsletter without having to market it very hard. Like as my presence on LinkedIn grows, my newsletter grows, and I don't have to work to like push it very hard. So the newsletter, the email component has better data, and I get to see more of like what people are clicking on. LinkedIn doesn't have very good analytics, so I've been doing both in tandem.
Okay, so good to note there. So you're getting better data on email. Any idea what's kind of happening behind the scenes? Like I'm interested I've seen the email newsletters from all the different systems. I know there's other examples of it, but you have grown. I think you're somewhere around. You're closing in on 2,000 subscribers on LinkedIn in the newsletter. Do you? I mean, you don't get open rates. You don't get.
On the email, we're around 50%.
And what about on LinkedIn? Do you have any idea what your reach and engagement?
I just get an impression number, so it's usually around it's usually around like 20 or 30% of the subscribers is how many impressions I get.
Okay, so if somebody was thinking about building a newsletter, would you push them towards or away from LinkedIn, or is it supplemental?
It's supplemental. I would view email as the primary source and LinkedIn as supplemental. Like I would not try to own LinkedIn because LinkedIn owns that. If they change something, you're kind of screwed. And you get, again, with the analytics, like I don't know how many people clicked a link for a sponsor post I did like this week, but I know how many people on LinkedIn, but I know how many people clicked it and what my click-through rate is on the email, and it's really good.
Okay.
So, that's kind of like where some of that mentality is. You can own email, I think, better than you can on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is really easy to get your name out there. Because essentially you start using all the LinkedIn growth hacks to build your presence, and your newsletter just grows naturally because your presence on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right, let's switch gears to another enterprise or venture that I know you've put a lot of energy into with your local community, Commerce Catalyst.
Right.
Now, there's two outputs to that I'm familiar with. One is your Slack community, and one I think you had did you have your first large event here a couple months ago?
Yep. Yeah.
So if I were thinking about membership, thinking about my best customers, let's touch on community building just a tad, because those are two ways that very real ways that build community. One's digital, Slack. Some people would do LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, and then you have analog, right? Get everyone together, which isn't always possible, but but talk about those two things. You can even back up and talk about what Commerce Catalyst is, but what would you share with people? How does online and offline communities fit into membership?
Yeah, I would say so. I have very strong opinions on this, and I think that you can't do one. I think doing one or the other in isolation is a mistake. And what I mean is the Slack community is a great way where people can very quickly connect. And while we're our Utah focus group, there are people from all over the country and all over the world that are members of the community. The difference is people can come meet in person and then interact online when it's convenient for them. So they feed each other. So somebody that maybe has seen events happening, sees people going to this lunch and learns or these parties or whatever, they might not ever make it out, but they engage with everybody on Slack. And then, turns out, hey, my calendar opened up, I can come to an in-person one. So there's this way that those things can synergize, right? And for me, when I do in-person events, I like pushing people to the Slack community because, and we have now an email newsletter as well, so that I can communicate with them. So about upcoming events or activities or new partners or sponsors we have, right? It's easier to communicate that via Slack and email than it is at a conference, right? So there's strengths for each ones. And so the thing that I see as a mistake happening in a lot of the B2B plays is you see the end in mind too much. So you see a Facebook group of 100,000 people, or you see a 5,000 member Slack community. And so you think, oh, I've got to build that. But that's not how those people started. That's not how Commerce Catalyst started. We started out doing breakfast with 4 or 5 people.
Right.
And it was just B2B marketers. And so the idea is you start going, and the reason I like in person so much is you can very, very quickly, even using LinkedIn, find people in your area that would want to meet on the topic that you care about. And you could get a speaker that's like even a little bit of a mild celebrity in that community to come speak. And most people, in my experience, I don't pay speakers. I've had maybe one person in 2 years tell me that they were paid, and 95% of the people that I ask say either yes or I can't make this one, count me in for the next one. And just because of they want to be involved and included in something like that.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. I do like your advice, and I think I would tell someone the same thing. If you're going to do this, you got to do it. You got to do it both ways in some capacity. Now, the location thing could be tricky. Like we can all figure out the online, right? Slack and other mechanisms of groups. But the offline, if I were a consumer brand agency, whatever it might be, I would think, oh, you can come to where I'm located. I've seen, I don't know what your experience is with this, where a brand or a creator or a marketer will host the event at the industry trade shows, or they'll find some reason to do it in some location. Like maybe you have a lot of customers in LA. We'll go to LA, host an event. Like it doesn't have to be where you, as the marketer or idea person, or the whatever word you give yourself, it doesn't have to be where you're located. You can meet your customers where they are. And I like the example of maybe they're at the national trade show. Well, it's easy enough to rent a spot and grab everybody that's going and get 10, 20 people together.
And the really common play there is people say it's $10,000 for a booth space plus a few $1,000s for the printed materials and all that stuff, and you're not sure how much good foot traffic you're going to get. Well, for $2,000 or $3,000, you can rent out a local restaurant, throw a party that night, and just invite as many people as you can and that you run into there and from your own email list to come hang out. Because I think a lot of times, as B2B marketers, we think too much of scale instead of thinking if I put on an event for $3,000 and I get 10 leads out of it, that's $300 a lead. That's pretty good for compared to the rest of my SaaS model, where I'm normally through my paid ad campaign, I'm paying, you know what I mean? So if you start breaking it down in smaller pieces, it can make more sense. And you can always scale that. You can always hire more people. You can always do more of that if it's starting to work. I think that's one of the fun things. If you start to get traction, like, you'll just do more of that. So try to find some successes early on and validate if it's going to work.
Well, when you say that too, let's say there was a conference going on in Orlando, Florida. I picked the most political examples possible, right? If I can get 10 or 15 people together, there's also the possibility of bringing in a sponsor.
Right. Absolutely.
The same way that you were thinking about that engagement, for $300 a lead, boy, there's other vendors, service providers, brands that might like to get in front of, or interact with those 10 or 20 people.
And that's how most people do it. Like I see with a B2B SaaS, like with an e-com, you'll usually see 2 to 3 brands kind of teaming up to do one of those events. Because then it's 3 people bringing in lead sources. It's 3 people splitting the cost of the bill. You know what I mean? So it becomes a lot. So again, finding common ground with allies, partners makes things a lot easier. I mean, for sure,
Yeah.
from a cost standpoint, from the
Yeah.
work involved, all that.
Well, and what's great about it, and I'm gonna try to tie this together now. But if you're a brand marketer or creator and you do something like this, well, now there's that's not only great for the brand, great for the community, but now you have another benefit of being a member or subscribing to whatever product or service is that we have annual events. That'll get provided. Now I know you're kind of forward committing to things when you do that, but that would be an example if that is something that would be of value to people, both meeting whatever you do at that, but also meeting their fellow whatever the community is is another benefit. And so you're building
Absolutely.
out your membership offer. Great. Well, Matt, this has been fun. I appreciate your time. I learned a lot about membership subscriptions and how I should be thinking about it going forward. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. It's been fun, man.